This podcast is supported by Music Theater of Wenatchee, celebrating 64 years of bringing stories to life. From show-stopping musicals to powerful plays, the Music Theater of Wenatchee stage is where stories come alive. Now they are writing the next chapter, and you can help make it happen. To support the next act of community theater in Wenatchee, visit annex.mtow.org and donate today.
Opening nightclub.
We're not opening a nightclub.
It's the opening nightclub. We can't wait to watch an opening night show, because on opening night we always go with our opening nightclub. Opening nightclub.
Welcome back to the Opening Nightclub podcast. This is the podcast where we get together every week to discuss and celebrate local theater here in Central Washington. I'm your host, Kevin McKee, and with me today, I am just delighted to have musician, band leader, theater veteran, and my friend Glenn Isaacson. How are you doing today, Glenn?
Doing great, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I am excited to have this one. I think we've talked a couple times about getting you on the podcast, and we talked, and I think that you are somebody that's done so much work over the years for theater in the Valley, especially for music theater, and you're a guy that's been in the background. Even when you were president of music theater, you were still band leader and guy in the background.
Yes, I was. I started playing music a long time ago, and I've always been more a music guy than a theater guy, but I got the opportunity as I started dipping my foot into the world of theater. My wife at the time was real involved with music theater and plays and singing and all that.
Is that how you got in?
Yes.
Yeah? And she said, oh, yeah, by the way, my husband, he can run this stuff.
She used to have board meetings at 6 a.m. in my backyard as I was fast asleep upstairs.
Wow. 6 a.m. board meetings?
Really? Yeah, 6:30 a.m. before you went to work. Yeah, that kind of thing.
So you started working with music theater, and what are the roles? Like, you've been band leader for multiple musicals.
Back in the time that I was involved with the building phase of the Riverside Playhouse and doing pit bands large and small for productions, in the early days at Wenatchee High School for the larger shows, and then once Riverside was up and running, did a lot of them in the new facility down there.
So just to put a little context for this, music theater for many, many years was kind of housed out of a garage on Benton Street. And we did that, I think, probably starting in the 70s we started building Riverside Playhouse in 94?
I would say mid-90s, sometime in there, yes.
Mid-90s. And you've got a background, your day job is not in construction, but you're a construction guy and kind of a hobbyist.
Exactly. Yeah, I was around woodworkers, and my father and his father were home builders, remodelers, cabinet makers, and so forth. So I was at least exposed to that side of things, and ultimately it was something I enjoyed doing. I did actually much more of it after I was out of school and out of college even, but once I had a little time and a place to work, it was a very fun thing for me to do, is just kind of go make some sawdust.
So when you got involved, when they brought you on as a band leader, did you join the board before they started construction?
I would say I was probably on the board before I was really doing any of the music work for the musical play.
Okay. And so they started building Riverside Playhouse, and there's a whole lot of story around there. But because you had some construction background, you were instrumental in putting that thing together.
Well, I was one of the people that was in the crew that regularly showed up. We had our friend Susan Gupsh was coordinating volunteers, and Mike Armstrong was sort of the head of the whole remodeling campaign down at what would become Riverside. And so we got together on Thursday nights, I think it was, and Sundays for most of 2 years, week after week after week.
Yeah.
And Greg Armstrong as well was one of the mainstays that just came in all the time. And, we started with a big concrete box. And ultimately we did all the framing.
And really it was all built with volunteer labor from what I can tell.
Yes. The only thing we hired out in total was the very involved electrical work for all the onstage lighting and lighting controls.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the lighting, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's tough now because they use DMX. It's all computer controlled. And so every one of the newer lights, the LED lights, they have constant power. But for the old ones, every single outlet had to have its own run. And so you would take three or four outlet plugs, and those would run all the way back to its own dimmer panel. So we still have an enormous set of dimmers in the back room.
Oh, I remember that stack, and I forget the exact numbers, but there was roughly, 200 or 300 actual plug-ins in the ceiling up above the stage there at Riverside, and on about 90 different possible circuits.
Yeah.
And they'd have to plug everything in and then get the dimmer packs hooked to the right group of lighting on the ceiling, and that's how it was done in the day.
That's how it was done. I think it'll probably be done differently if we build another one at some point in the future, we probably wouldn't have that level of dimmer packs. We'd probably all go to computer-controlled ones.
I'm sure that's true. I would not recognize how that's done.
Yeah.
And I never really knew much about it, but what I saw in my time down there was, I think, would be completely different now.
Yeah. So you came into this primarily as a musician. And so what is your instrument of choice? Are you primarily a keyboardist?
I grew up playing piano, yeah.
Okay. And so as a kid, they forced you to take lessons. Did you play in high school?
Well, I did ultimately do band in junior high and high school, but I started piano lessons in about fifth, sixth grade, and with a very atypical teacher, had a little different approach. He was a former silent movie organist.
Wow.
Played the organ that's at the museum.
Okay.
When it was at the Liberty Theater, and accompanied silent movies. And he was very small of stature, and he'd had polio, and but he was just a wonderful fellow and a wonderful musician, and he taught me things about music, not just where to put your fingers to play a certain note, but he taught me about chords, and it helped me learn kind of how music was built. So,
yeah.
Within a couple of years, I got asked to be the kalliope player in the Circus band here, the Wenatchee Circus. So that was when I actually kind of got the fever of getting out there and playing for folks.
Performing in front of people. So the calliope, how different is that from an organ?
Well, a calliope is like a pipe organ of sorts. There was a compressor that made the air source that went into the instrument. When you press a key, it opens a valve that lets air get into the pipe that's hooked to that particular key. And it was only like 43 notes.
Oh, I gotcha.
Pretty short keyboard, but big, heavy thing.
I bet.
But
and so you would go around with the U Circus, and this was when you were in high school.
Actually, the 3 summers of junior high. So after 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I was in the circus.
You were playing calliope in the circus.
Yeah.
Did they ever get you on the trapeze?
Well, I had one act in the latter year called the revolving ladder that I did with a fellow guy that we were wearing clown makeup, and I was the cop and he was the convict, and I chased him and he went up the rope to the ladder, and then when we got up there, when I chased him up there, then he went up high on it, and then we went round and round and round. Then ultimately we got to the place where he gives up, and we do the gag, which is him falling through a very, very long T-shirt holding on to a rope all the way to the ground.
That's awesome. So we can add circus performer to your resume.
I guess so. You
Yeah,
know.
musician, circus performer.
And Paul Pugh, the guy that put it all together, started it and ran it for all those years, was a drummer
Okay.
of sorts. So we would do the pre-show music together, and he would just play a little snare drum and hit a cymbal, and I would be playing the kalliope, and we'd be just a duo out there playing pre-show music before the circus started.
Wow.
And I think back, you know, I was only in 7th, 8th grade, but we did that somehow.
Wow. So you have been super active in Wenatchee Big Band.
My dad was one of the 3 fellows that started it
Oh,
when I was still living in Southern California. So it started in 81, and I returned to the Valley in the late 80s. So,
okay. And did you did you join Big Band as soon as you came back?
I did.
And playing keyboard, playing piano?
Playing piano, yeah.
Okay.
Jeff and I now co-lead what we call the Holiday Spice Big Band. The very earliest Holiday Spice shows in 06 or 07 were the Wenatchee Big Band.
Okay.
And I was not actually an active member at that time, but the piano player that replaced me stepped aside, and I played piano and ran the band for the early 2 or 3 Spice shows.
Okay.
Then we started the independent get-together once a year Holiday Spice Big Band.
You were there at the beginning of Holiday Spice,
Yes,
right?
yeah, with Marilyn Everhart.
Okay. And Holiday Spice was really just a variety show, just an opportunity for people to sing in front of the big band.
Or, you know, juggle or,
Yes.
you know, dance to a track or...
Yeah. No, and I think something that a lot of people might not recognize is that you're also an arranger.
Yes, I have been trying to write a decent band chart for many years now.
Well, you've been writing a lot of band charts. So most of the music that the Holiday Spice Big Band is playing is things you've arranged.
Much of it over the years, we've created quite a library of things, mostly backgrounds for singers, because they'll come in and they want to sing a certain holiday song, and you cannot obtain in any way for any cost a big band arrangement for that song in the key they need it.
Gotcha.
That doesn't exist out there. So that's why I started trying to learn how to put notes on the page.
I don't know where you started with Follies, but you're also just an integral part of Follies.
I've been in every Follies since '88.
Okay.
I just did my 13th one.
Okay.
I remember as a kid sitting in the seats at the Liberty Theater watching Follies rehearsals that involved my folks and some of their friends.
I gotcha.
It was an event, an occurrence that I was familiar with, and as soon as I moved back to town, I got involved with it.
And so your parents were performing? Were they in the band or?
No, they weren't really musicians, and I don't really recall either of them really being on stage. They may have been in the chorus or something.
Okay.
I just don't know, but they were involved in some fashion in that time.
So how different was Follies at that time than it is this year?
Well, dramatically different, partly because that's a show that evolves somewhat with the music and dance and costuming of the time. Mm-hmm. But the main difference since the early 2000s was Jamie Donegan leaving an organization called Cargill back in New York that was the organization that was coming to town every 3 years, starting in 1948, to put on the Follies. And they would bring a director, and we had, I think, I did 4 or so before Jamie Donegan showed up in our lives. But that was quite an experience because most of these directors were characters, to say the least. And, you know, the costuming came from, you know, the headquarters back east, and it was old and tattered and outdated, and the music that they gave us to work with was just a mess.
So actually it was probably nice for you to arrange your own stuff and clean stuff up.
Well, as you sorted, I had literally an apple box full of music spread out all over the dining room table trying to see what I had, and it was just a mishmash of things. You had a little piece of music for a flute that you'd put on on a lyre for marching in the parade for Apple Blossom or whatever the tune was. And then you'd have another piece of music that was the same song, but, it was a piece of music for something completely unrelated to the first one that had the same title. So I ended, in those days, I need to write a trombone part for that one. I need to write a sax part for this one.
And you'd fill it in.
Try to, because the band was the band. It was, 6 or 8 people. And so that's helped me to get my wings, sort of.
You've been arranging music for both Big Band, Holiday Spice, the Follies. And so I think a lot of that you've been building up into the catalog that you've got today.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to take it in a different place. You've also been running a jazz band for a long time.
Well, I've been involved with big band, jazz, and had a combo when I was in high school and junior college. We used to play the proms and so forth. But back in my high school years, Don Lanfer, the local saxophone legend, put together a regional stage band, jazz band that got together and did a show once in a while, and so I was part of that. So, and we had a stage band after school as well through the high school music program.
I remember you guys would play at McGlynn's a lot.
When McGlynn's opened, we had a little 4-piece group that I got asked to be a part of, and we played in there on Wednesdays for a long time.
Yeah, there was many years that, and we had a lot of different singers. I think Dana was one of your...
Dana was our singer for a long time.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I've kind of followed Glenn Isaacson around town in the jazz bands. You were telling me you played at Watercore last night.
Well, yes. This is a compulsion. It's probably not unlike what singers and actors experience in the theater realm. But if you're playing music at this time in your life on any kind of regular basis, it suggests you kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I do get the sense you enjoy it. Are you playing bass now, or are you playing piano?
I'm actually playing a lot of bass now. I took that up about 20 years ago just because there weren't too many bass players around in the jazz world especially. So I've enjoyed that. It's quite a lot of the things I learned as a piano player transfer in terms of note selection and so forth, but you still have to manage the beast, figure out where to put your fingers. But it's a kick, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident about it.
After 20 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're pretty good. I think I don't know that you've got to worry about that too much. I'm going to hit the wrong notes on the bass. It's jazz, so you can't hit the wrong notes occasionally, right?
Well, the old saying in the bass world is, the wrong note in the right place is better than the reverse of that.
Ah, no, perfect. Yeah, that's kind of a jazz thing.
Exactly. I mean, you are a timekeeper.
That's right. We are jumping all over our timeline here, but I will go back to building the Riverside Playhouse. At some point, you became president of music theater as the band leader and as Riverside Playhouse was just getting started.
Early days, I was part of a committee that helped raise some money when the supporters of the center who music theater was renting from in the earliest part of that facility down there, and they wanted to get out of the landlord business and get some money so they could keep working on the Performing Arts Center. So I was part of a committee to raise some money for a down payment, and then the construction was complete, but we had to buy the building, and so we went out and got a loan. And
I think, if I'm right, it was you and Arlene that signed the note saying, I will personally pay for this.
And Marilyn.
Yep. Yeah, that just because music theater really had no money, and it was an organization that just went month to month hoping that they made enough money on a show to pay the mortgage.
Well, they'd socked away a fair bit of money in that previous years, but they spent almost all of it building the Playhouse.
Yeah. And then at the end, once it was all built, you were told, well, you need to buy the building or move out.
But we got it done.
Yeah. No, and you were instrumental in that.
I was on the board at a time when we took on that very seemingly large responsibility for the organization in that time frame, and made it work and paid it off early and moved on.
Yeah, I was talking to you earlier, and I do remember I was on the board at the time that you were president, and they had a rule that presidents could only serve 2 terms, and
2 years.
Yeah, well, the term was a year, and so you could serve 2 terms. But Maryland wanted to keep you on as president, so they changed the bylaws to say the term was now 2 years, which meant you could serve 4 years.
And when I said I'd stay on, I thought I would stay on for another year.
Yes.
And they said, "Oh no, it's 2 again."
It's 2 now. No, I do remember that, and you were a good sport, and also great person to be leading the organization, which is probably not something you were thinking. This is what I'm going to be board president for 4 years.
Well, I have my friend Mike Armstrong to thank for asking me to the board, I think, and also suggesting, as he was not leaving the presidency, that I should get in line to move in that same path.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Well, and he took the path. He took it all the way to Olympia, where he was a politician for years and years. So he took the president of Music Theater pretty seriously.
It was really a joy to be a part of all of that. It's one of the things in my lifetime that I'm very proud of, is helping to get that place built.
Yeah.
And running,
Yeah. No, it was one of the things when I was on the board and we were talking about getting the annex, and it was like, we don't have Glenn Isaacson on the board to start building this stuff, to manage this stuff. We don't have Mike and Greg Armstrong. We don't have Steve McGurn. We don't have the guys that we really depended on to construct stuff.
Well, I think the nature of the board certainly is different, in part because it has to be. It's a whole different kind of organization right now. You do so much more and have so many other concerns and ways to spend your time and energies.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to report that Stephen and I were down there a couple of weeks back to help put a little more flooring down, and
awesome.
It was a joy,
Did it feel like old home week, where these guys come back and you're like, hey, this is pretty comfortable. I know how this works.
Well, I'll tell you, we missed Suzanne, the coordinator and a snack provider, but
well, we will make sure you get snacks next time. We'll put an order in.
But Mr. Mauser has said that if you had fun today, don't you worry. We've got about 6 times more floor than this to do soon.
Oh yeah, no, that's when we went over the first time and looked through, and we saw the old concrete in the annex, and it was like, oh, we've got to cover all of this. And it's old concrete that they've been working on cars and stuff in there. So it's like, well, how do we clean it? How do we seal it? And then how do we cover it up?
Well, during this last Follies, we had Follies rehearsal in there 2 different times in the 2 weeks prior to moving it to the PAC, and people do not like dancing on
concrete.
On that concrete.
Yeah.
It's just doesn't work the same.
We were there this weekend to watch Legally Blonde, and they were it was like Friday night, and they were adding in dance rehearsals because this is such a heavy dance show, and they've got so many people, and they're all on concrete. So, yeah, I know that was one of the things in the phase 1 that they really need to get the dance floor in, so that so we can do actual dances. That and soundproofing were kind of the big thing.
Well, and John Mauser said, we can't get in there and work quite yet because they're using it for the Apple Blossom show. But May and June, we'll be back at it as soon as I move in.
Yeah. No, it's been kind of fun with the annex. I don't know if you've noticed as you've been down there when they're rehearsing, there's nobody in the Playhouse. We've really set it up so they can... the whole Apple Blossom show is all running out of the annex. So we could add 1-2 more shows in the spring in the Playhouse.
It's amazing. That addition and the flexibility it gives the organization is astounding, because back in the day when I was around so much, you had people rehearsing in the shop because there was another activity on the stage, and, you had to find a band room to practice at a school or something, because there was no room to get a band together, because every inch of it was being used for rehearsal in one way or another. Yeah.
No, we're moving forward. The Valley is getting bigger for theater. doing more.
And going down there for Follies rehearsal and seeing all the props wonderfully organized and on their nice little shelving units and so forth. It's quite a change.
Yeah, well, you remember we used to have all that stuff in Steve Zimmerman's place up above on the second floor.
Oh, yes. I got involved in some of that moving activity.
Yeah, boy. It was so hard to get it in there and get it out. And now it's just, I think we're using so much more of it because I can just walk over and say, we did the show for Skylar, and it's like, I think we have a gurney. But I know that if we had a gurney upstairs somewhere, it probably would have stayed there. We would have done without. So,
well, I remember one time when you were just looking for a piano bench, and it was like, well, the piano's here, but the bench is over there in that storage unit
That's
somewhere,
right. Yeah. So you've been involved in a lot of shows. What was your favorite show? What show where you're like, okay, if I could do this again, I probably would?
Well, that's a tough one. Musically, one of my favorites, or a couple of my favorites, would be Chorus Line, and of course, there's a lot to love about the Grease show.
Yeah.
Love doing, Nancy Zahn was the lead at the PAC. We had a great big orchestra down in the actual pit.
Okay.
And we had, 4 timpani and 3 mallet instruments and, 10 wind players. It was...
Wow. That's a big pit.
Yeah, we had about 20 people.
Wow.
That was a fun time.
Yeah.
Leading a band like that, is kind of a terrifying / exhilarating experience, depending on what exactly happens in a given night. You can understand that, I'm sure, as you have to try to get a fellow actor to say the line you're waiting for.
That's
try
right.
to work around it.
Well, and if people are just familiar with watching shows, you have to actually follow them. So if they skip, a verse or something and move into the bridge, you've got to move into the bridge with them. And so it's that push and pull where they're following the band, but if they do something weird, you've got to change.
I have one very specific moment that I won't mention any names, but I could just tell that this particular singer singing in her big song in the play was kind of acting like she was in this spot a little further down the page than really we were. We weren't quite there yet, and I had that instantaneous feeling of, oh, she's going to go there. And way louder than I was comfortable. I just had to kind of shout out to this 15 people at the back of the stage where we were in that particular show. The rehearsal number, okay, she's going to 85 or something. I just 85, and we'd make the jump.
Yep. No, and I've heard that not just from you. I've heard it from other conductors for a show where they will start just shouting out numbers because that's the measure that we're now on. It's not in order. We've had to skip forward 10 bars, but now we're definitely on 88.
We need to avoid the crash.
Yes, that's right. Well, the show must go on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to keep going, and that's part of that's the thrill of live theater, is you never know what's going to happen.
It is, and when it all comes together, it's just such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And if you really are paying attention, I think you got to have that little bit of trepidation at the ready at all times.
You can't be too confident.
I can't imagine, 8 shows a week for, 6 months a year longer. Although, and we did in the early days, we were doing those apple blossom shows when we first opened Riverside. We'd do them for a month.
Yeah.
Do 15 or 16
5 weeks
shows
or something.
Because of the smaller number of seats we have in there. And that was still fun. But there is a point where you kind of been there, done that, I guess. Probably for those on stage as well.
It gets to be work at that point. Yeah. Okay. Well, Glenn, it has been really good talking to you.
Likewise.
I think I can't wait to see the new stuff you're doing, and I'm sure we'll be working together, especially on things like Holiday Spice and Follies and all sorts of things that we'll be doing here in town.
I will look forward to that.
So that about wraps it up here at the Opening Night Club. If you're listening, go out there and see some theater, support the local performing arts, go see big band, go see these different performances, and if you get a chance, whatever you do, make sure you go out and see another opening night.